Hey everyone. So in this particular video, I'm going to be referencing an article of the Toronto Sun. And this is some great stuff because we're finally getting, it's taken a while, right? A long time. That's the thing with big government, bureaucracy, and those who represent the establishment. Yeah, they function, well, why do you think the Trudeau Liberals had to bail out the media in this country to the tune of $600 million? Yeah. Once again, ineptness, it seems to rule the day. But just like a broken clock can be right twice a day, well, even some contributors in the establishment media can finally come around and start pointing out some of the realities that people like myself have been doing for months now. It's nice to see that they're finally catching up, although if you ask me, they shouldn't be in a position to have to catch up to someone like myself. They should be way out in front and far ahead of me. But once again, in this modern Orwellian world, up is down, in is out, and ineptness is competence. Headline of the Toronto Sun: Ontario, former Ontario Chief Medical Officer sides with Roman Baber on lockdowns. It's reported by Andrew Fury, January 18th, 2021. A former provincial top doctor has sent a letter to Ontario Premier Doug Ford siding with Roman Baber, the MPP who broke rank with his own government to call for an end to lockdowns. MPP Baber made 5 key points in his open letter, and I believe he was correct on all 5 items, writes Dr. Richard Caucus, who served as Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health from 1987 to 1997. He notes that Baber deserves great credit for opening up the discussion on lockdowns. Lockdown was never part of our planned pandemic response, nor is it supported by strong science, adds Caucus, who notes he helped train current top doc David Williams. 2 recent studies on the effectiveness of lockdown shows that it has, at most, a small COVID mortality benefit compared to more moderate measures. Both studies warned about the excessive costs of lockdowns. Caucus also served as chief of staff at York Central Hospital during the 2003 SARS crisis. Now, let me just say before I go on any further, folks, it's the thing, effectiveness, it isn't the only measure, right? Come on. Think about it. Let's take a little trip in the Wayback Machine and go back to Germany of the late 1930s or 1940s, right? I'm pretty sure there was all kinds of excuses offered by, and a lot of scientists, right? A lot of people that were experts in their field, as we know, right? That's the beautiful thing, is once you've had enough time to actually think about these things critically and have all the evidence in front of you, which you're not seeing today, right? It's an unfolding saga and situation, so that doesn't happen, and we're not privy to that kind of information as of yet. Although, if you're intuitive in any way, you should be able to figure this stuff out rather easily if you have at least a firm grasp or understanding of the whole point and importance of freedom and all that stuff. But anyways, once again, you can rest assured and be assured that the scientists of the day in Nazi Germany could have claimed all kinds of effectiveness, right? Like, of course, effectiveness, right? If you want to wipe out, think about it. If you're Hitler, right, and you want to wipe out the Jews, right? You're looking for ways that are most effective in doing so. And I'm sure the scientific community, obviously, they figured out a multitude of ways to become quite efficient at trying to extinguish an entire group of people, right? But is that a good thing? That's the area where it's like, wait a minute, effectiveness. But what are we talking about here? Can we introduce morality or ethics into the equation? Perhaps. Do you think that's kind of important? But that's the thing that we're seeing time and time again, is these people, whether they're from the establishment media or the current ruling class, it's just their opinions are completely subjective and based on whether it's going to benefit them in some way. There's no universal consistency. There are no principles, because if there were, then we would be able to follow that logic. A libertarian, trust me, I'm really good at following logic, understanding reason, and principles, right? 2 + 2 is 4, right? Easy stuff to figure out. But if you're trying to convince me that 2 + 2 is 5, does not compute, right? Simple. But anyways, let's get back to the article. Last week, Baber was booted out of the Progressive Conservative Caucus by Ford for releasing an open letter calling on the government to change course in its response to the pandemic. Progressive conservative, right? That terminology, every time I hear it, and the fact that they're still willing to use this stuff is progressive conservative. It's like the slow fast guy, right? Or that white black guy. What? What? I mean, do you not get that these are oxymorons or complete contradictions, right? It's progressive conservative. Holy crap. But hey, I mean, come on. In modern day Kanakistan, people accept this stuff as like something that's genuinely real, right? Canadians, and there are a substantial portion of them, and we all know this, and it's not even funny. It's a sad, sorry state of affairs, but I suppose it probably has something to do with that massive amount of illiteracy. More than half, folks, and this is just the truth, and they're coming to terms with this as well, as yeah, the majority of Canadians, not quite as wise and prudent as you would hope, right? And that's the thing with democracy, people that constantly promote democracy. Well, don't you think that requires at least a wise, prudent, and into at least somewhat intellectual population? People actually understand concepts and principles and even what freedom means. Don't you think that would be kind of important, right? I would suggest, I would say, but no, once again, it's just about who can create the best sales narrative that the unsuspecting or ill-informed and dumbed-down masses will latch onto. COVID is real, but the fear of COVID is exaggerated. While every death is tragic, after 10 months, we've learned that COVID is not nearly as deadly as first thought, Baber's letter stated. Baber called for the government to pivot towards better protecting long-term care facilities and increasing hospital capacity. Once again, really cool that this former, top-notch guy in the health services or field in Ontario, right? I'm glad they're finally coming around. But once again, just go back to my early live streams when coronavirus, the whole COVID-19, the whole outbreak, the whole pandemic was just starting happening. I was saying this stuff, like I say, that 9-10 months ago. Why is it that these people are finally coming around now? I mean, am I exceptional in some way? I don't know. I don't usually, I guess in some way, I suppose, but really, well, that's a scary fact then. So even if that is the case, right, that I'm just much more competent than all these other people, well, think about it. I have basically a few hundred people that listen to me in this country, which is just a tiny, that's the proverbial needle in a haystack. But yeah, these people, these so-called experts they have the ears of millions of people in this country. So once again, how about you step out of the darkness or the shadows and say these kind of things when it's really important to do so, not like many months later when it's like, oh, okay, is it safe to say this? It's so cowardly. Man, that is one thing I acknowledge in this country is cowardice. Well, it's a commodity that's not just on full display, but something that we have in spades in this country, which is a sad reflection for a country that claimed to be the strong and free, right? Not so much anymore. Not so much. Ford accused Baber of spreading misinformation over the letter. Ford? What is Ford? He owns some printing business, right? A quasi-entrepreneur, although he's also big into government. So how much did he use government to benefit his business? I don't fucking know. I don't know. But he definitely isn't a healthcare expert by any stretch of the imagination. But he's going to suggest that this person who claims to be, or who was, or who is acknowledged as such, that he's just spreading misinformation. But Ford, the politician, no. What he's saying is totally legit, right? Yeah, wink, wink. Which included statistics about death rates and hospital ICU capacity. The government sent out its own fact sheet countering some of Baber's claims, to which Baber in turn offered a response. Lockdown is an affront to social justice because its burdens fall disproportionately on the young, the working poor, and visible minorities, observes Chavez in his letter. We will be paying for lockdowns in lives and dollars for decades to come. Our well-intentioned but misguided efforts to control COVID are only compounding the tragedy. We need to change course. No one has all the answers, but the first step is to start asking the right questions. And that's the thing. Once again, folks, people like myself, are we given a voice? No. So until we're at least given a voice, right, or allowed to sit at the big boys and girls table and actually have our positions respected, right, and have these kind of conversations, debate, then don't expect anything to get any better. That's just the truth of the matter of fact, and that's basically what this person is alluding to as well. And yeah, he's absolutely correct. right? It's not the hacks and the establishment media who haven't really noticed any detriment to their bottom line or their lives, social or economically, right? Matter of fact, a lot of people who are part and parcel of big government are making out like bandits, or the corporate class, right? Or the banksters, or even some of these big social media execs. There are some people in society who are making out like bandits and benefit tremendously under these unjust and unconstitutional limitations or restrictions on our rights, freedoms, and liberties. The problem is we need the bulk, the majority of Canada or Canadians in this democracy to start learning that you're not one of the ones that are winning by having your rights, freedoms, and liberties restricted or impeded. I don't know unless that we truly have reached that tipping point in this country where more people benefit as a result of big government than those who suffer as a consequence of big government. And I firmly believe in modern day Caucus, we may very well be in that place, in that position where you're not going to vote your way out of it, folks, because the majority, the mob, want this to take place and are benefiting from it. What do you do in that situation or scenario, folks? That's something that Canadians really need to sit down and think about. And as I'm moving on to the next video, I'll even link to this article in the description of the video below. And I'll see you in the next one. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.